I am Stephanie Clark, 31, and literally, last weekend, my rep as the family fixer? Yeah, it totally backfired. The savings account I'd worked my butt off to build for both me and my brother Keith, it blew up into a full-on family betrayal when my mother drained it dry for Keith's latest failed business at our tense family brunch. My mother, with her usual dismissive wave, demanded I co-sign for a house loan they couldn't afford. And when I clapped back, the room went dead silent. "You're abandoning your family," she yelled, with everyone staring like I'd just kicked a puppy. But here's the tea. Their shade didn't break me, it lit a spark. I'm not just pushing back, I'm about to flip the script and change everything. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, hit subscribe, and stay with me for the most satisfying stand you'll ever hear. Looking back, it's almost unreal what I'll do once I make that final decision. My hands gripped the edge of the kitchen table, knuckles whitening as I stared at the empty coffee mug in front of me. The brunch was supposed to be a simple catch-up, but the air felt thick with expectation, like I'd walked into a courtroom instead of my mother's dining room. Keith slouched across from me, scrolling his phone, not even pretending to care about the conversation. My mother, Patricia, stood at the head of the table, her arms crossed, her lips pursed in that way that always meant she was about to drop a bomb. My father, quieter but no less complicit, avoided my eyes, stirring his coffee with a clink that echoed in the silence. I'd spent years playing the good daughter, the one who smoothed over fights, who worked overtime to keep us afloat, who never asked for much. But that account, $30,000 I'd scraped together from late-night shifts and skipped vacations, was meant for both of us. For college, for a future, not for Keith's latest pipe dream. A vape shop that tanked in 6 months. "Stephanie, you're being dramatic," my mother said, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. She adjusted her glasses, a gesture I knew was less about seeing clearly and more about asserting control. "Keith needed the money. You've always been so responsible. You'll figure something out." Keith didn't even look up, just smirked at his screen like he'd won some silent victory. I felt my throat tighten, the familiar sting of being sidelined. My whole life, I'd been the shadow to Keith's spotlight. At 16 I won a regional essay contest, $1,000 prize, and they barely mentioned it. Keith flunked out of community college that same year and they threw him a fresh start party. I'd learned to swallow the hurt, to keep the peace, but this was theft. I pushed my chair back, the scrape against the hardwood loud in my ears. "You didn't ask me," I said, my voice low but steady. "That was my money too." My mother's eyes narrowed, and my father finally glanced up, his brow creasing like he was surprised I had a spine. Keith snorted, muttering something about me being uptight. The room felt smaller, like the walls were closing in, and I could hear my heartbeat pounding in my ears. I'd spent years building that account. Every paycheck a brick in a wall I thought would protect my future. Now it was gone, and they expected me to nod and smile, to keep carrying their weight. I didn't yell, I didn't cry, I just sat there, my fingers tracing the chipped edge of my mug, feeling the weight of every sacrifice I'd made for them. The brunches, the late-night calls to bail Keith out, the loans I'd never see repaid. I'd been the glue, the one who held us together. But glue doesn't work when everyone else is pulling it apart. My mother launched into her usual lecture about family loyalty, but I barely heard her. My mind was racing, replaying every time I'd said yes when I wanted to scream no. The account was the last straw, but it wasn't the first. I glanced at the family photo on the wall, us at Christmas, me smiling tightly while Keith grinned like he owned the world. That girl in the photo didn't know how to fight back. But I wasn't her anymore. I stood, my chair wobbling behind me. "I need some air," I said, my voice calmer than I felt. My mother's mouth snapped shut, and Keith finally looked up, his smirk fading. My father reached out, like he might say something, but his hand dropped back to the table. I grabbed my jacket from the back of the chair, the leather creaking in my grip, and walked out. The door clicked shut behind me, softer than I wanted it to. I stood on the porch, the cold air biting my cheeks, and felt something shift inside me. Not anger, not yet. Just a spark, small but stubborn, whispering that I didn't have to live like this anymore. I didn't know what I'd do next, but I knew I wasn't going back to that table. Not without a fight. As I leaned against the porch railing, the chill seeping through my jacket, my mind drifted back to all the times I'd felt this same invisible weight pressing down on me. It wasn't just today's betrayal with the savings account, it was a lifetime of it, stacked like bricks until I could barely breathe under the load. I stared at the cracked pavement of the driveway, remembering one particular evening that stood out sharper than the rest. The night of my high school graduation, when everything crystallized for me about how my family saw me. Or rather, didn't see me. That was the moment I first realized I was just background noise in their story. Always expected to applaud while Keith took center stage no matter how many times he stumbled. It was June, humid and sticky, the kind of night where the air clung to your skin like regret. I'd just graduated with honors, top 10 in my class, a scholarship to community college in hand. I'd worked for it, staying up late studying while flipping burgers after school, saving every penny for that joint account my parents insisted on for both kids' futures. The ceremony had been a blur of caps and gowns, but I remember the pride swelling in my chest as I walked across the stage, diploma in hand. My name echoed over the speakers, and for a second I felt seen. But when I scanned the crowd, my mother's smile was tight, her eyes already darting to her watch. Keith hadn't even shown up. He was busy with some friends, probably nursing a hangover from whatever party he'd crashed the night before. We got home and the house smelled like takeout pizza. My mother's idea of celebration. No cake, no balloons, just greasy boxes on the kitchen counter. I set my diploma on the table, still in its folder, hoping someone would notice. My father grunted a good job as he cracked open a beer, his eyes glued to the TV where a baseball game blared. Keith stumbled in late, reeking of smoke, his hair tousled like he'd just rolled out of bed. "Hey sis, congrats or whatever," he mumbled, grabbing a slice without looking at me. My mother fussed over him immediately, asking if he was hungry, if he needed anything. I sat there, my cap still on, feeling the tassel brush my cheek like a mocking reminder. Then came the real kick. My mother pulled out an envelope from her purse, sliding it across the table to Keith. "This is for you, honey," she said, her voice soft, the way it never was with me. Inside was $500, cash she'd scraped together from who knows where. "For your car repairs, you need reliable wheels to get to those job interviews." Keith grinned, pocketing it without a thank you, like it was his due. I stared at her, my mouth dry. "What about my scholarship? I thought we were saving for college." She waved it off, her hand fluttering like I was a fly buzzing around. "You'll be fine, Stephanie. You're smart. Keith needs a little help right now. He's going through a rough patch." Rough patch? He dropped out of high school 6 months earlier, spent his days gaming and mooching off friends. My father nodded along, not even pausing his channel surfing. I clenched my fists under the table, nails digging into my palms until they left crescent marks. The pizza turned to ash in my mouth as I forced a smile, saying something lame like, "It's okay, really." But inside, it burned. Why was my achievement a footnote, while his failures got rewarded? I excused myself early, retreating to my room, the small one at the back of the house, walls thin enough to hear everything. I lay on my bed, staring at the ceiling fan whirring lazily, tears pricking my eyes. That diploma on my desk felt hollow now, like a prop in someone else's play. I replayed the night in my head. The way my mother's eyes lit up for Keith. The casual dismissal of my hard work. It wasn't the first time. There was the science fair in middle school where I placed second, and they forgot to come. Keith's little league game the same day got a family outing. Or my first job at 15, handing over half my paycheck for family expenses. While Keith blew his allowance on video games without a word. But that graduation night stuck with me because it was the first time I felt the resentment coil tight in my gut, like a spring ready to snap. I didn't confront them then. I was too young, too scared of rocking the boat. Instead, I bottled it up, adding it to the growing list of slights. Keith's rough patches became a pattern. Failed jobs, bad investments, always bailed out by my parents, often dipping into that shared account I'd contributed to faithfully. My successes, they were expected, unremarkable. "Stephanie's the reliable one," they'd say, like it was a compliment, but it felt like a cage. I tossed and turned that night, the fan's hum mocking my racing thoughts. By morning I'd pushed it down again, pasting on a smile for breakfast. But the spark from earlier on the porch? It was fanning that old flame now, making me see the pattern clearly. Standing there in the cold, I wrapped my arms around myself, the memories flooding back in waves. That graduation wasn't just one night, it was the blueprint for every interaction since. My promotion at work last year? A quick, "That's nice" over the phone, while Keith's latest scheme, a food truck that never launched, got a family loan. I could feel my jaw tightening, teeth grinding as I recalled how I'd always stepped aside, always sacrificed. But why? For love? Obligation? The wind picked up, rustling the leaves in the yard, and I shivered. The house behind me felt like a stranger's now, full of people who took without giving back. I pulled out my phone, scrolling through old photos. Me at graduation, alone in the frame because no one thought to take a family shot. The resentment built, not explosive, but steady, like pressure in a fault line. I didn't go back inside that day. I got in my car, the engine rumbling to life, and drove away, the rearview mirror showing the house shrinking smaller. But the memories followed, whispering that I'd been invisible too long. That night, alone in my apartment, I sat on the couch, knees drawn up, hugging a pillow. The realization hit me hard. I'd been funding their favoritism with my silence. No more. The spark was growing, and for the first time I let it burn. That night stretched on forever in my tiny apartment, the couch sagging under me as I hugged the pillow tighter, its worn fabric scratching against my arms. The lamp cast a dim glow over the room, shadows dancing on the walls like ghosts of all the chances I'd let slip away. My phone buzzed on the coffee table, probably my mother, firing off texts about how I was overreacting, but I didn't reach for it. Instead, I let the silence wrap around me, broken only by the distant hum of traffic outside. The realization from earlier that I'd been enabling their favoritism with my own hard-earned cash gnawed at me like a persistent ache. But it wasn't just anger, it was clarity, sharp and unforgiving. For the first time, I saw the pattern not as inevitable family dynamics, but as a choice. My choice to keep saying yes. And in that quiet moment, alone with my thoughts, the aha hit me like a slap. I didn't have to rebuild that joint account. I could build something for myself, in secret, away from their grasping hands. I shifted on the couch, uncurling my legs and planting my feet on the threadbare carpet. My laptop sat on the side table, screen dark, but I pulled it onto my lap anyway, the cool metal grounding me. I'd always been good with numbers, balancing budgets at my admin job, tracking every expense in a spreadsheet that no one else ever saw. That joint savings account? It had started as my parents' idea when I was a teen, but I'd been the one depositing faithfully, watching it grow from my paychecks, while Keith withdrew for emergencies that were anything but. Now it was empty, zeroed out for his vape shop flop. I logged into my personal bank app, the screen lighting up my face in blue hues. My checking account stared back, modest but mine. $8,000, scraped from overtime and side gigs freelancing data entry. It wasn't much, but it was untouched by them. My finger hovered over the transfer button, heart pounding. What if I started squirreling away more, aggressively? Without telling anyone. No more loans to Keith, no more covering Mom's unexpected bills. Just me, building a wall of financial security they couldn't breach. The struggle kicked in then, real and raw as doubts flooded my mind. I set the laptop aside and paced the small living room, my socks whispering against the floor. What kind of daughter was I? Plotting in secret. Family was supposed to come first. That's what they drilled into me since I was little. I stopped at the window, pressing my forehead against the cool glass, staring at the streetlights below. Memories tugged at me. The times I'd handed over cash to Keith, his grateful nod that never led to repayment, Mom's tearful calls about bills, guilting me into Venmoing hundreds. Each time I'd felt a twist in my gut, but I'd done it anyway, chasing that fleeting sense of being needed. Now with the account drained, that twist turned to fire. I clenched my fists, nails biting into palms again, the pain a sharp reminder. If I kept this up, I'd be 40, still broke, still overshadowed. The aha deepened. This wasn't selfishness, it was survival. I could save for my own future. A small home, stability, peace, without their approval. I returned to the couch, laptop back in place, and opened a new spreadsheet. My hands trembled slightly as I typed headers. Income, expenses, secret savings goal. I calculated quickly. My salary was $45,000 a year, after taxes about $3,000 a month. Rent took $1,200, groceries $300, utilities $150. That left wiggle room if I cut back. No more eating out, no subscriptions I didn't need. I leaned forward, elbows on knees, scrolling through my budget. Coffee runs? Gone. That gym membership I'd barely used? Cancelled tomorrow. Each cut felt like a small rebellion, my breaths coming faster with the thrill of it. But the struggle lingered. I imagined Mom's disappointed face, Keith's accusatory texts. "You're abandoning us," she'd say. I paused, fingers frozen over the keys, doubt creeping in like fog. Was I really capable of this? Hiding money, lying by omission? I closed my eyes, breathing deep, in and out, the air filling my lungs slowly. The spark from the porch reignited. Yes, I was, because they'd hidden the drainage from me until it was done. Turnabout was fair. Pushing through, I set a goal. $20,000 in a high-yield savings account, separate from everything. Online, I researched options, clicking tabs quietly as if someone might overhear. One bank offered 4% interest, no fees, easy transfers. I signed up right then, the process taking minutes, my details typed with deliberate keystrokes. Transferring $500 from checking felt monumental. I hit confirm, watching the screen load, my leg bouncing with nerves. Done. The balance showed $500, a start. But the intense struggle wasn't over. It morphed into planning the grind. I'd need side hustles. I browsed freelance sites, my mouse clicking softly. Data entry gigs, virtual assisting, things I could do evenings. One posting caught my eye, $15 an hour for bookkeeping. I applied, attaching my resume, fingers crossing unconsciously. The doubt whispered again. What if they found out? I shoved it aside, standing to make tea, the kettle's whistle piercing the quiet. As it steeped, I leaned on the counter, mug warming my hands, steam rising in curls. This secret wasn't about revenge, it was reclamation. Every dollar saved was a step away from their shadow. Hours ticked by, the night deepening. I mapped out a schedule on paper, pencil scratching. Work 9 to 5, freelance 7 to 10 p.m., weekends for more. My eyes burned from the screen, but adrenaline kept me going. The aha evolved into resolve. I'd been capable all along, just misdirected. By 2 a.m., exhausted but buzzing, I closed the laptop, the click final. Laying in bed, sheets cool against my skin, I stared at the ceiling. The struggle faded to quiet determination. This secret fund would grow, hidden, until I could buy my own place. No cosigns, no obligations. Sleep came slowly, dreams fragmented with numbers and freedom. Morning light filtered through curtains and I woke with purpose, checking the app first thing. Still $500. I smiled faintly, a real one, tucking the phone away. The decision was made, locked in my chest like a vow. They'd never know until it was too late to stop me. But building it wasn't easy. The intense struggle played out daily. At work that week, I skipped lunch to apply for gigs, my stomach growling as I typed. Evenings, I worked until my back ached, screen glare giving me headaches. Family calls went unanswered, guilt twisting like a knife. One night, Mom left a voicemail, voice cracking. "We need to talk about the house." I deleted it, hands shaking, but transferred another $200 instead. Months blurred, paychecks funneled secretly, balance climbing. $5,000, then $10,000. Each milestone I'd fist pump alone, whispering, yes. The hidden success peaked when I hit $25,000 beyond my goal, from relentless hustle. I sat on the floor, statements printed, fingers tracing the numbers. Tears came then, hot and relieving. This was mine, proof I wasn't just the overshadowed sibling. The aha had led here, self-built, unbreakable. I folded the papers, hiding them in a drawer, lock clicking shut. The decision solidified, I'd use it for my home, not theirs. Peace settled, fragile but real, as I prepared for the inevitable confrontation. The morning light had shifted from that triumphant night months ago to this overcast Saturday, where the peace I'd scraped together felt as thin as the steam rising from my coffee mug. I stood in my apartment kitchen, the counter cluttered with real estate listings I'd printed out, my fingers tracing the edges of a modest one-bedroom cottage on the outskirts of town. $220,000, within reach now that my secret savings had ballooned past what I'd dreamed. The realtor had called yesterday, voice excited over the phone. "Stephanie, your offer's strong, we could close in weeks if the inspection clears." It was the life-changing step I'd been building toward, a quiet victory that would lock in my independence. But as I set the papers down, the mug warm in my hands, a knot tightened in my stomach. Today was the annual family dinner, the one my mother insisted on every year like clockwork, and I knew it wouldn't be just small talk and casserole. They'd been hinting for weeks about big family plans, code for another demand on my wallet. This time, co-signing a loan for a sprawling house they couldn't afford, one where Keith could get back on his feet in the basement suite while my parents took the main floors. I sipped the coffee, the bitterness mirroring the dread building inside me, as I reluctantly began preparing for the evening ahead. I glanced at the clock on the microwave, 10:17 a.m., plenty of time, but my body moved slowly, like wading through molasses. I set the mug down with a soft clink, the ceramic cool against the formica, and walked to my bedroom, feet dragging on the worn carpet. The closet door creaked as I opened it, revealing rows of sensible blouses and slacks, nothing flashy. I pulled out a navy button-up, holding it up to the light filtering through the blinds, my reflection in the mirror showing tired eyes and a furrowed brow. Why this one? It was armor. Professional, unassuming, the kind that said I'm capable without inviting questions. I laid it on the bed, smoothing the fabric with my palm, feeling the faint wrinkles give way. My mind raced ahead to the dinner table, imagining my mother's expectant gaze, Keith's casual lean in his chair, my father's silent nods. They'd frame the cosign as a family investment, but I knew the truth. It'd tie me to their debts, their failures, while my own dreams stayed on hold. I shook my head, trying to dislodge the thought, but it clung like static. Moving to the bathroom, I turned on the faucet, the water rushing out in a steady stream that drowned out the distant city noise. I splashed my face, droplets clinging to my lashes, cool against my skin. Staring into the mirror, I gripped the sink edges, knuckles paling. The woman looking back had changed since that night of spreadsheets and vows, stronger lines around her mouth, a resolve in her eyes. But the old fears whispered, what if they guilt me into it? What if I cave again? I dried my face with a towel, patting gently, the fabric rough from too many washes. No, I told myself, exhaling slowly, breath fogging the mirror. The savings app on my phone, hidden in a folder labeled recipes, showed $27,342 now. Every freelance check, every skipped luxury funneled there. It was my deal, my future, not theirs. But preparing for tonight meant steeling against the emotional barrage, and that started here, in these quiet rituals. I brushed my hair next, the comb tugging through knots with rhythmic pulls, each one a small assertion of control. My thoughts drifted to the house listing again, that cottage with its tiny yard, a place where I could plant flowers without anyone else's input. The realtor's words echoed, it's perfect for someone starting fresh. Fresh. That's what I craved, but the dinner loomed like a storm cloud. I set the comb down, fingers lingering on the handle, and applied a touch of makeup, mascara, a swipe of neutral lipstick, nothing to draw attention, just enough to feel put together. My hand trembled slightly on the tube, a micro-betrayal of nerves. I capped it firmly, the click echoing in the small space. Back in the bedroom I slipped into the blouse, buttons fastening one by one, each a deliberate motion. The fabric settled against my skin, cool and crisp, but my shoulders tensed anyway. I added slacks and low heels, the shoes pinching a bit as I paced the room, testing my stride. Sitting on the bed's edge, the mattress dipping under my weight, I pulled out my phone, scrolling through unread texts from Mom. Can't wait to see you tonight, we have exciting news. Exciting for them, burdensome for me. I typed a reply, see you at 6, then deleted it, rewriting to add a smiley emoji, my thumb hovering before hitting send. It felt fake, but necessary to keep the peace until I was face to face. The knot in my stomach twisted tighter, and I pressed a hand to it, feeling the warmth through my shirt. Why did I even go? Obligation, habit, a lingering hope they'd change. But deep down, I knew this dinner was the breaking point, the eve of my judgment on their endless taking. I stood, smoothing my outfit again, a habitual fidget. In the kitchen, I packed a bottle of wine as a contribution, twisting the cap absent-mindedly, the label peeling at the edge where my nail caught it. The afternoon dragged as I tried to distract myself, folding laundry on the couch, each shirt snapped straight with more force than needed. Socks paired, drawers organized, mundane tasks to ground me. But every few minutes I'd glance at the clock, time crawling. By 4 p.m. I sat at the table, listing pros and cons in my notebook, pencil scratching paper. Pro, closure; con, confrontation. My handwriting slanted with pressure. The savings were my ace, but revealing it too soon could backfire. I tore the page out, crumpling it in my fist, the paper crinkling sharply before tossing it in the trash. Standing, I grabbed my keys, jingling them in my palm, the metal cold. It was time to head out early, maybe drive around to clear my head. The door locked behind me with a solid thunk, and in the hallway I paused, back against the wall, breathing deep. The confrontation was coming, but so was my freedom. The weight pressed, but I straightened, steps echoing down the stairs. Tonight I'd face them, reluctant but ready, on the verge of flipping everything. As the car engine hummed to life, wipers swiping at a light drizzle, I gripped the wheel, knuckles white. The radio played softly, but I turned it off, preferring silence to match my swirling thoughts. Streetlights blurred past, and I rehearsed lines in my head. No, I won't co-sign. I've got my own plans. Simple, but saying it aloud in the empty car made my voice waver. I adjusted the rearview mirror, catching my own eyes. Determined, scared. The dinner was hours away, but preparation meant fortifying every inch of resolve. By the time I pulled into a coffee shop lot to kill time, sipping a decaf, the cup's heat seeping through, I felt the impending judgment like a physical presence. This was it, the eve where I'd decide to break or build. The coffee shop's warmth faded as I stepped back into the drizzle, the door chiming behind me like a reluctant goodbye. My decaf cup, now empty and crumpled in my hand, went into the trash bin outside, the lid popping off with a faint snap. I slid into the car, the seat leather chilled from the weight, and checked the time. 5:45 p.m. Just enough to arrive on the dot. No early lingering that might invite pre-dinner probing. The engine turned over with a low rumble, and I pulled out, wipers resuming their steady swipe against the speckled windshield. The drive to my parents' house was familiar, each turn a muscle memory, but tonight it felt like navigating a minefield. Streetlights cast elongated shadows on the wet pavement, mirroring the stretch of my nerves. I rehearsed again, whispering to the dashboard, "No, I can't do that. I've got my own responsibilities." The words sounded firmer this time, but my grip on the wheel tightened anyway, fingers aching from the pressure. As I turned onto their street, the house came into view. Lights glowing in the windows, Keith's beat-up truck already parked crooked in the driveway. I pulled up behind it, engine idling for a moment as I stared at the front door, its peeling blue paint a reminder of all the maintenance I'd offered to help with, only to be waved off. I killed the ignition, the sudden quiet amplifying the rain's patter on the roof. Grabbing the wine bottle from the passenger seat, its glass cool and slick, I stepped out, umbrella forgotten in the trunk. Droplets hit my hair immediately, trickling down my neck like cold fingers. I hurried up the walkway, shoes squelching on the wet concrete, and knocked. 3 sharp raps, my knuckles stinging from the force. The door swung open almost instantly, my mother standing there with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, her apron dusted with flour. "Stephanie, right on time as always," she said, her voice laced with that familiar edge, like punctuality was a quirk to tolerate. She leaned in for a hug, her arms loose around me, patting my back twice before pulling away. I handed her the wine, our fingers brushing briefly, hers warm from the kitchen. "Oh, a red. Keith prefers white, but it'll do." She set it on the hall table without a glance at the label, turning to lead me inside. The house smelled of roasting chicken and something sweet. Apple pie, probably mixed with the faint mustiness of old carpets. I shrugged off my jacket, hanging it on the coat rack, the hanger clinking against others. My father looked up from his armchair in the living room, newspaper folded in his lap, glasses perched low on his nose. "Hey, kiddo," he grunted, not standing, just nodding once before returning to his reading. Keith lounged on the couch, legs sprawled, remote in hand as he flipped channels. He glanced my way, smirking. "Sis, you made it. Thought you might bail after last time?" His tone was light, but the jab landed, referring to the brunch where I'd walked out after the account revelation. I forced a smile, lips pressing tight, and sat on the edge of the love seat, perching like I might bolt. "Wouldn't miss it," I replied, my voice even, hands folding in my lap to hide the slight tremble. My mother bustled back in, wiping her hands on her apron, settling into the chair beside Dad. "So how's work? Still at that office job? She asked, her head tilting, eyes scanning me like she was cataloging changes. I nodded, uncrossing my ankles only to recross them. Yeah, same place, busy as ever. It was neutral ground, but she leaned forward, elbows on knees. Busy? You mean those long hours for what again? Filing papers? She chuckled softly, like it was a joke, but her eyes didn't laugh. Keith snorted from the couch, muting the TV. Yeah, Steph, when you gonna get a real gig? Like something exciting. I was thinking of starting a podcast, true crime stuff. Could use a co-host who's good with details. He winked, but it felt like a hook, baiting me into his next scheme. I shifted, the cushions sinking under me, my fingers twisting the hem of my blouse. I'm happy where I am, pays the bills. My father cleared his throat, folding the paper with a rustle. That's practical. Not everyone needs flashy, but Keith's got ideas, always has. The conversation flowed like that, a steady drip of condescension masked as chatter. My mother stood to check the oven door creaking open with a wave of heat, then returned, perching on the arm of Dad's chair. Remember Aunt Linda's daughter? She just got promoted to manager at her firm. Younger than you too. She sighed, hand on her chest. Makes you wonder what opportunities you're missing, stuck in that rut. I felt my cheeks heat, not from the room's warmth, but from the implication. I was stagnant, unambitious. I opened my mouth to mention my freelance side work, the savings I'd built, but clamped it shut. That was my secret, not ammunition for them. Instead I said, I'm building something steady. Keith rolled his eyes, exaggerated, stretching his arms overhead. Steady's boring, sis. Live a little. Hey Mom, tell her about the house idea. Not yet. They were warming up, probing weak spots. My mother waved him off, but her smile sharpened. In a minute. First, Stephanie, you look tired. Are you eating right? All those solo dinners in that apartment must be lonely. Her concern sounded genuine, but the undertone twisted it. Pity for my sad life. I straightened, spine pressing against the loveseat's back. I'm fine, really. Busy, like I said. My father chimed in, glasses glinting as he adjusted them. Good to hear, but family helps with that. We stick together. It was a backhanded reminder, their unity versus my isolation. Keith grabbed a handful of nuts from the bowl on the coffee table, crunching loudly. Yeah, unlike some people who storm out over nothing. He popped another nut, chewing with his mouth open, eyes on me. The barrage continued as dinner neared, each comment a needle prick. My mother fetched drinks, handing me a glass of water. No ice, the way I liked, but she added, You sure you don't want soda? Might perk you up. Keith teased about my outfit. Dressed for a board meeting? Loosen up. Dad mentioned the news. Economy's tough, glad you've got that job even if it's not much. I endured, sipping water that tasted flat, my free hand clenching into a fist in my lap, nails digging half-moons into skin. Inside, thoughts churned. This is the gauntlet, wearing me down before the ask. But my resolve held, fragile but intact, as the oven timer buzzed, signaling the shift to the table. My mother stood, clapping her hands. Dinner's ready, let's eat, then we can talk about the future. I rose slowly, legs heavy, following them to the dining room, the air thicker now with unspoken demands. At the table, plates clattered as she served, steam rising from the chicken. I took my seat, napkin unfolding in my lap with deliberate folds. The initial wave had passed, but the contempt lingered in their glances, setting the stage for what came next. The steam from the chicken curled upward like accusations unspoken, mingling with the scent of garlic and herbs that suddenly turned my stomach. I smoothed the napkin across my lap again, fingers pressing the fabric flat against my thighs, as if that small act could anchor me to the chair. My mother portioned out the food with efficient scoops, her serving spoon clinking against each plate. First Dad's, then Keith's, then mine last, the helping noticeably smaller, though she didn't comment. Keith dug in immediately, fork scraping the porcelain with a grating sound, chewing noisily as he leaned back in his chair. My father unfolded his napkin with a snap, tucking it into his collar like a bib, his eyes flicking to me briefly before dropping to his meal. We ate in relative silence at first, the only sounds the clatter of utensils and the occasional sip from water glasses, condensation beating on the sides and dripping onto the tablecloth. I poked at my food, the chicken cooling on my fork as I lifted a bite but set it down untouched, my appetite vanished under the weight of anticipation. My mother broke the quiet first, dabbing her mouth with her napkin, folding it precisely before speaking. So, Stephanie, we've been thinking a lot about the future lately. Family future, I mean? Her voice was casual, but her eyes locked on mine, unblinking, like a predator sizing up prey. Keith paused mid-chew, his jaw working slower now, a smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. My father nodded subtly, cutting into his meat with deliberate slices, the knife sawing back and forth. I set my fork down gently, the tine tingling against the plate, and met her gaze. "What about it?" I asked, my tone neutral, though my pulse quickened, thudding in my ears. She leaned forward, elbows resting on the table, her fingers interlacing tightly. "Well, you know how cramped things are here. Keith's been looking for a place to really get his business off the ground, something with space for inventory, maybe a home office." Keith nodded vigorously, swallowing his bite with an audible gulp. "Yeah, and Mom and Dad could use more room too. We're thinking a bigger house, 4 bedrooms, nice yard. It's perfect, close to town, good schools if things change down the line." He gestured with his fork, waving it like a conductor's baton, bits of food flecking the air. My father cleared his throat, wiping his mouth before adding, "It's an investment, for all of us." The words hung there heavy, and I felt the room shrink, the walls pressing in as their eyes all turned to me. I shifted in my seat, the chair creaking under me, my hands dropping to my lap where I twisted the napkin into a knot. "Sounds expensive," I said slowly, buying time, my voice steadier than I felt. My mother smiled then, but it was tight, lips thinning. "It is, but that's where you come in. We've got most of it sorted, the down payment from selling this place, but the bank wants a co-signer for the loan. Someone with steady income, good credit." She paused, her fingers drumming once on the tablecloth, a soft thump that echoed in my chest. Keith leaned in, elbows planted, his stare intense. "You're the reliable one, Steph. Always have been. This is family helping family." My father avoided my eyes, focusing on spearing a vegetable, the fork piercing it with a soft crunch. The demand was out now, formal and unyielding, wrapped in that guise of unity. I felt heat rise in my chest, spreading to my neck, but I kept my expression blank, unclenching my fists under the table where no one could see. "You want me to co-sign? Put my name on a mortgage for a house I won't live in?" My words came out measured, but inside, the spark ignited fully, flames licking at years of resentment. My mother sighed, a long exhale through her nose, her shoulders slumping dramatically. "It's not like that, you'd be part of it, visits, holidays. And if something happens, well, you're family." Keith snorted, pushing his plate away with a scrape. "Come on, don't make it a big deal. You've got that job, savings probably stashed away, we've always shared." I shook my head slowly, the motion deliberate, my hair brushing my shoulders. "No, I can't do that." The refusal slipped out firm, no waver, and the table went still. My mother's fork paused halfway to her mouth, hovering there as her eyes widened. Keith's smirk vanished, his brows knitting together. My father finally looked up, his knife clattering to the plate. "What do you mean, no?" my mother asked, her voice rising an octave, napkin crumpling in her grip as she set her utensil down. I met each gaze in turn, Mom's shocked, Keith's angry, Dad's uncomfortable. "I mean exactly that. I've given enough. The savings account you drained, that was for my future too. I'm not tying myself to more debt for Keith's schemes or your upgrades." The escalation hit like a wave. Keith slammed his palm on the table, the glasses jumping with a clink, water sloshing over the rims. "Selfish. After everything we've done for you?" His face reddened, veins bulging in his neck as he leaned forward, finger jabbing the air toward me. My mother gasped, hand flying to her chest, fingers splaying wide. "Stephanie, how dare you? We've sacrificed for both of you. This is about keeping the family together." Her voice cracked on the last word, but her eyes flashed with fury, not hurt. My father shifted, chair scraping back slightly, his hands folding into fists on the table, knuckles whitening. "Think about this, kiddo. You're turning your back on us." I didn't flinch, though my heart hammered, breath shallow. "I'm not turning my back, I'm setting boundaries. You've exploited me for years, my money, my time, while Keith gets passes." Keith stood abruptly, chair tipping back with a thud against the wall, his face twisted. "Exploited? You're the golden child, always perfect. We need this and you're too uptight to help." He paced a step, hands raking through his hair, tugging strands. My mother rose too, slower, her napkin dropping to the floor unnoticed. "If you refuse, you're choosing yourself over family. We might as well cut ties, no more holidays, no more support. The threat landed, formal now, her arms crossing tightly, chin lifting in defiance. The outrage built, voices overlapping. Keith muttered curses under his breath, pacing tighter circles, his sneakers scuffing the floor. Ungrateful bitch, he hissed, low but audible, making me clench my jaw, teeth grinding. My father stood finally, hands raised placatingly, but his words sided. She's right, Stephanie, this could break us. Break them, not me. I pushed my chair back slowly, the legs dragging with a groan, standing to face them. Then consider it broken. I'm done being your safety net. My voice held, but inside emotions roiled, relief mixed with sorrow, the finality sinking in. My mother's face crumpled into lines of anger, tears welling but not falling, her finger pointing. Get out! If you're not with us, you're against us. Disowned, that's what you are. The word echoed heavy as Keith nodded furiously, arms crossed now, mirroring her stance. I grabbed my napkin, tossing it on the plate with a soft flop, the fabric stained from disuse. The room spun slightly, but I turned, steps measured toward the door, their voices chasing me, accusations of selfishness, threats of no contact. My hand on the knob, cool brass under my palm, twisted it open, the night air rushing and cold and freeing. I didn't look back, the door clicking shut behind me, muting their outrage to murmurs. The night air hit me like a slap, colder than I remembered, cutting through my blouse as I stumbled down the porch steps, my heels catching on the uneven concrete. The door's click echoed in my head, final and hollow, sealing off the chaos inside where their voices still raged in muffled bursts. My mother's shrill accusations, Keith's booming retorts, my father's low murmurs trying to calm the storm I'd unleashed. I wrapped my arms around myself, rubbing my biceps against the chill, but it did nothing for the deeper freeze settling in my chest. Disowned. The word throbbed like a fresh bruise, each step away from the house pressing it harder. My car sat at the curb, a shadowy shape under the street lamp, keys jingling in my trembling hand as I fumbled them from my pocket. I pressed the unlock button, the beep sharp in the quiet neighborhood, lights flashing once like a beacon. Sliding into the driver's seat, the leather creaked under me, still warm from the drive over, but I felt numb, disconnected, like I was watching myself from afar. I shut the door with a soft thunk, the interior light fading slowly, leaving me in dim dashboard glow. My hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles paling as I stared at the house's lit windows, silhouettes moving inside, probably pacing, gesturing wildly about my betrayal. Tears pricked my eyes, hot and unwelcome, and I blinked them back, refusing to let them fall. Not here, not for them. The humiliation burned, years of sacrifice boiled down to this, cast out for finally saying no. I rested my forehead against the wheel, the plastic cool on my skin, breaths coming in shallow gasps. What now? The savings were safe, my cottage offer pending, but the isolation hit hard. A void where family should be. My phone buzzed in my purse, vibrating against the passenger seat, insistent. I ignored it at first, assuming it was Mom firing off texts to reel me back with guilt. But it kept going, a call now, the ringtone slicing through the silence. I reached over, fishing it out, the screen lighting up my face, Lisa's name flashing, my closest friend from work, the one who'd listened to my rants about family over countless lunches. Why now? We hadn't planned to talk. I hesitated, thumb hovering over the decline button, but something, curiosity, desperation, made me swipe accept. Hello? My voice cracked, raw from the unshed tears, and I cleared my throat, sitting up straighter as if she could see me. Lisa's voice came through, warm and steady, a lifeline in the dark. Steph? Hey, I know it's late, but I had to call. You won't believe this, I just got off the phone with my realtor cousin. Remember how you mentioned looking at that little cottage? He says your offer's looking golden. The sellers are thrilled with your financing proof. He thinks it'll go through smooth as butter. I froze, hand tightening on the phone, the device pressing hard against my ear. The timing, right after the blowout, in this moment of deepest low, felt surreal, like the universe was throwing me a rope. Wait, what? How did you? I didn't ask you to check. My words tumbled out, disjointed, as I glanced back at the house, the front light flicking on, probably them checking if I'd really left. Lisa laughed softly, the sound grounding me. I know, but you've been so stressed about family stuff, I figured I'd nudge him for an update, no biggie. He pulled some strings, peeked at the paperwork. Your savings check out strong. No liens, solid credit. They want to close fast. This is it, girl. You're getting your own place. No more apartment life. No more sharing walls with noisy neighbors. The affirmation washed over me, unexpected and affirming, solidifying the fog of doubt that had crept in during the dinner. I leaned back against the headrest, eyes closing as relief flooded in, mixing with the residual ache. My free hand traced the steering wheel's seams, fingers following the stitched leather in slow circles, a tactile anchor. Lisa, you have no idea. Tonight was hell. They asked me to co-sign for a house, for them, and I said no. They basically disowned me. The words spilled out, voice thickening, and I swallowed hard, tasting salt from a stray tear that escaped. She gasped, then her tone shifted to fierce support. What? Oh, Steph, screw them. You've bent over backward for years. This cottage, it's your win. Imagine it, your kitchen, your rules, plants on the windowsill without Keith trampling them. You've earned this. Use that money for you. Her words echoed my internal resolve, but hearing them aloud from someone who saw me clearly, without the family filter, made it real. I nodded, even though she couldn't see, my head bumping the seat. The phone speaker crackled slightly as she continued. Listen, I've seen how they treat you. Like a bank, not a daughter. This call, it's fate saying go for it. Book the inspection tomorrow. I'll come with if you want. You're not alone in this. Not alone. The phrase hit deep, contrasting the emptiness from the house. I wiped my cheek with the back of my hand, the skin damp, and managed a shaky laugh. Thanks, Lisa, really. I was sitting here questioning everything, but yeah, I'm doing it. My home, my way. We talked more, her voice a steady stream. Details on the cottage's quirks, like the cozy fireplace she'd heard about, tips on negotiating closing costs. Each word built my confidence, her enthusiasm infectious, pulling me from the pit. As we spoke, I started the car, the engine purring to life, headlights cutting through the rain-slicked street. I pulled away slowly, the house shrinking in the rear view, its lights blurring. Lisa's affirmation kept coming. You're strong, Steph. This is the start of something better. Peace, respect, people who value you. I murmured agreements, my grip loosening on the wheel, shoulders dropping from their tense hunch. The call stretched, her pausing to sip what sounded like tea. The clink of a mug faint over the line. Promise me you'll celebrate when it closes? Dinner on me. I smiled faintly, the first real one since arriving, lips curving as I turned onto the main road. Deal. We wrapped up, her goodbye warm, the line clicking off, leaving the car quiet but not empty. I drove in silence, processing, the wipers thumping rhythmically. The call had changed everything. At my lowest, it reaffirmed my path, turning humiliation to empowerment. The savings weren't just numbers anymore, they were my future, concrete and mine. By the time I reached my apartment, parking with a gentle bump against the curb, resolve had hardened. I'd email the realtor tonight, push forward, no looking back. Unlocking my door, keys rattling, I stepped inside the familiar space, feeling like a haven. I kicked off my shoes, toes flexing on the carpet, and sank onto the couch, phone still in hand. Lisa's text popped up. You got this. I thumbed a heart back, chest lighter. The deepest humiliation had cracked me open, but this call sealed the resolve. My home, my peace, starting now. The heart emoji lingered on my screen for a moment before I set the phone down on the coffee table, the glass clinking softly against the wood. I leaned back into the couch cushions, the fabric yielding under my weight, and let out a long breath that I'd been holding since stepping through the door. The apartment felt quieter than usual, the hum of the fridge in the kitchen a distant comfort, but my mind raced with Lisa's words. My offer strong, closing fast. A place of my own. It was real now, not just a secret spreadsheet but a tangible shift. I kicked my feet up onto the ottoman, toes wiggling free from the confines of my heels, which I'd left haphazardly by the door. The relief was there, bubbling under the surface, but so was the raw edge of the dinner, the disownment still echoing like a slammed door in my chest. I closed my eyes, head tilting back, and massaged my temples with slow circles, the pressure easing the budding headache. Then the phone buzzed again, vibrating against the table with an insistent rattle that made me jolt upright. The screen lit up. Mom's name, bold and accusatory. My stomach twisted, a familiar knot reforming as I stared at it, the ringtone chirping on, cheerful in contrast to the dread pooling in me. Part of me wanted to let it go to voicemail to bury it under ignored calls like so many before. But Lisa's affirmations still hummed in my veins, a spark of courage. They were scrambling already, I could feel it, the stunned aftermath of my refusal hitting them now that I'd walked out. I snatched the phone up, thumb swiping to answer before I could second guess, holding it to my ear with a grip that turned my knuckles white. "What?" I said, voice flat, no greeting, my free hand clenching into a fist on my lap. "Stephanie? Oh, thank God you picked up." My mother's voice rushed out, breathless, like she'd been pacing too. In the background I heard muffled shuffling, Keith's low mutter, my father's cough, and realized I was on speaker, the echo tinny through the line. "Honey, we need to talk. That was emotional back there. Come back, let's sort this out properly." Her tone shifted from the dinner's fury to something softer, pleading, but laced with that manipulative edge I'd known all my life. I stood up slowly, the couch springs creaking in protest, and began pacing the living room, my socks sliding slightly on the carpet with each step. The lamp's light cast my shadow long against the wall, wavering as I moved. "Sort it out," I echoed, stopping at the window, fingers parting the blinds to peek at the dark street below, rain still pattering against the glass. "You disowned me, Mom. Keith called me selfish. Dad just sat there, what's left to sort?" Keith's voice cut in then, louder, closer to the phone, his words clipped with frustration. "Come on, Steph, don't be like that, we were heated, okay? Family says stuff in the moment, but we need you, for the house, for everything. You're the one with the steady job, just co-sign, and we'll forget this happened." Forget. The words stung and I let go of the blinds, the slats snapping back with a clatter. My reflection stared back from the window, eyes narrowed, jaw set. They were scrambling. All right, stunned that I'd actually left, now backpedaling with half apologies, dangling forgiveness like a carrot. My father cleared his throat, the sound phlegmy over the line. "Kiddo, your mother's right, we overreacted. But think about it. This house is for all of us. You'd have a room if you wanted. We're family." His voice was gruff, avoiding the heart of it, as always. I resumed pacing, turning sharply at the end of the room, my hand running along the bookshelf, fingers brushing spines of old novels I'd collected over years, small escapes from their world. The hypocrisy boiled up then, years of it surfacing in a calm wave, fueled by Lisa's call. I stopped again, leaning against the wall, the cool plaster seeping through my blouse. "Family, let's talk about that. For 31 years I've been the afterthought. You celebrate Keith's every half-baked idea, fund his failures with money I helped earn, while my achievements? Dismissed. Remember my promotion 2 years ago? You said that's nice, and moved on to Keith's food truck plan, the one that lost $10,000. Silence stretched on the line, broken only by a sharp intake of breath, probably Mom's. Keith jumped in, defensive, his voice rising. "That's not fair. I've had bad luck. Yeah, but you're always fine, Miss Perfect, saving every penny, never needing help." He laughed bitterly, but it sounded forced, like he was fidgeting, maybe twisting a napkin or cracking his knuckles the way he did when cornered. I could picture them in the dining room still, plates pushed aside, phone in the center like a judge. My mother interjected, her words tumbling faster now, the scramble evident in her pitch. "Stephanie, we've supported you too. Who paid for your braces, your first car? We drained that account for Keith because he needed it more. You were always so capable." Capable. The word twisted like a knife, and I pushed off the wall, striding to the kitchen, phone pressed harder to my ear. "Supported me? You exploited me." My voice stayed calm, measured, each word deliberate as I opened the fridge, the light spilling out harsh and white, grabbing a water bottle just for something to hold. I twisted the cap off with a crack, the plastic crumpling under my fingers, but didn't drink, just held it, cold condensing on my palm. "That joint account? I put in 80% of it from my jobs while Keith withdrew for emergencies like concerts and bad bets. You never asked me before emptying it for his vape shop, and now, a house? For him to mooch in the basement, you two upstairs, and me on the hook if it all falls apart. Hypocrisy at its finest. You preach family loyalty, but only when it's me sacrificing." The line crackled with tension, my father's sigh heavy. "Now, hold on," he started, but Keith overrode him, voice sharper, angrier. "You're twisting it. We all sacrifice. What have you lost, huh? Living in that crappy apartment, hoarding cash like a miser." Hoarding. I set the bottle down hard on the counter, the thud echoing, water sloshing inside. That was my cue, the truth I'd hidden, now a weapon of exposure. Hoarding? I've saved $27,000 on my own, Keith. Freelance gigs, overtime, cutting everything while you blew through handouts, and guess what? I'm using it to buy my own home. A small cottage, offer accepted today. No cosign needed because I built it without you. Stunned silence hit like a wall, thick and absolute. I could hear their breaths, Mom's quick and shallow, Keith's ragged, Dad's paused as if he'd stopped mid-motion. Then the scramble intensified, voices overlapping in a frenzy. What? You have that much? Mom gasped, her chair scraping back over the line, probably standing now, hand to her mouth. Keith sputtered. Bullshit. If you had money, why not help us? Selfish, just like I said. Dad muttered something inaudible, then clearer. Stephanie, that's impressive, but think of us, share it. Family does that. Their hypocrisy laid bare, they still reached, stunned but grasping. I straightened, shoulders squaring as I walked back to the living room, the phone feeling lighter in my hand now. No, that's the point. You've taken enough. Years of double standards, my essay win ignored, Keith's dropouts celebrated, my loans to unpaid, his debts forgiven. I'm done. Find another way. My voice didn't rise, it flowed steady, each syllable a release. Mom's plea came desperate. Please, don't cut us off, come back, we can discuss. But I cut her off, thumb hovering over the end call button. Goodbye. I pressed it, the line going dead with a final beep, the screen fading to black. I tossed the phone onto the couch, where it bounced once before settling. My hands trembled slightly, adrenaline fading, but a powerful calm settled over me. The exit final, not just from the call, but from their hold. I sank back down, exhaling deeply, the room spinning a bit before steadying. They'd scramble more, texts probably incoming, but I'd silenced the ringer. The hypocrisy exposed, stunned them into silence, and me into freedom. The silence, after hanging up on them, wrapped around me like a blanket, not suffocating but soothing, as I stood in the middle of my living room, the phone still warm in my palm from the heated exchange. I placed it face down on the coffee table, the screen's glow muted against the wood, and felt the tension drain from my shoulders, leaving them lighter, almost buoyant. The apartment, with its familiar clutter, books stacked unevenly on the shelf, a throw blanket draped haphazardly over the arm of the couch, felt like a sanctuary now, not just a temporary stop. But the contrast hit me then, sharp and vivid. The toxic dinner, with its barbed words and forced smiles versus the possibility of something real, something chosen. My mind flickered to Lisa's call earlier. Her unwavering support cutting through the family's scramble like sunlight through clouds. On impulse, I picked up the phone again, thumbs flying over the keys to text her and our small circle of friends. Mark from freelance gigs, Sarah from my old book club. Rough night with family, up for a low-key hang? My place, bring takeout if you want. Send. The message whooshed off, and I set about tidying, straightening cushions with quick fluffs, wiping the counter with a damp cloth that left streaks I didn't bother fixing. Within minutes, replies pinged in, Lisa's first, on my way with pizza. You okay? Mark, beer run, be there in 20. Hugs incoming, plus ice cream. Their responses stacked up like building blocks, simple but solid, and I felt a warmth spread in my chest, thawing the chill from the dinner. I busied myself setting out plates, the ceramic clinking softly as I stacked them on the table, napkins folded into loose triangles beside. The doorbell buzzed soon after. And I padded over, socks whispering on the floor, peeking through the peephole to see Lisa balancing a pizza box, her rain-dampened hair frizzing under the hallway light. I opened the door, the aroma of cheese and tomato sauce wafting in, and she stepped inside without a word, kicking off her shoes with a thud before pulling me into a one-armed hug, the box pressing awkwardly against my side. Spill, she said, pulling back to search my face, her free hand squeezing my shoulder, fingers firm but gentle. I closed the door behind her, the latch clicking into place, and led her to the kitchen, where she set the pizza down with a satisfying slap on the counter. As I grabbed sodas from the fridge, the cold cans hissing open, I recounted the dinner, the cosign demand, the disownment, the hypocritical call after. My voice stayed even, but my hands gestured more than usual, slicing the air as I mimed Keith's palm slam, the fizz from the soda bubbling over my fingers unnoticed until I licked it off. Lisa listened, leaning against the counter, her arms crossed loosely, nodding at the right moments, her eyes never leaving mine. "They sound exhausting," she said when I finished, flipping open the pizza box, steam rising in lazy curls. She plucked a slice, cheese stretching in long strings before snapping, and handed it to me on a napkin that crinkled under the weight. Before I could respond, the doorbell buzzed again. Mark and Sarah arriving together, umbrellas dripping in the entryway as they shook off the rain. Mark set down a six-pack with a clunk, bottles rattling inside, while Sarah unpacked a pint of chocolate chip, the lid popping off with a soft suck. We migrated to the living room, plates in hand, settling into a circle on the floor like we were kids again, the couch too formal for this. I sat cross-legged, back against the ottoman, the carpet fibers tickling my ankles. Mark cracked open a beer, the tab fizzing sharply, and passed one around, though I stuck to soda, the can sweating in my grip. "Family drama?" he asked, tilting his head, his beard catching crumbs from his pizza bite. Sarah nodded beside him, spooning ice cream directly from the container, the metal scraping the sides. I dove in again, deeper this time, contrasting every detail of the dinner's poison with this moment's ease. There, the chicken had been dry, forked with resentment. Here the pizza was gooey, shared without tally. My mother's tight smiles and backhanded probes versus Lisa's open laughter as she recounted a similar story from her own past, her hand waving animatedly, nearly knocking over her drink. "My brother tried the same guilt trip last year, wanted me to fund his startup. I said no, and now we talk once a month, civil-like. It gets better." She leaned forward, elbows on knees, her eyes crinkling at the corners with genuine empathy. Mark chimed in, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand, napkin forgotten. "Parents can be blind to favoritism. Mine did it with my sister, always the star. But you? Building that savings solo? That's boss level." He raised his bottle in a toast, the glass clinking against Sarah's spoon as she joined, the sound light and celebratory. Sarah set her ice cream down, the container thudding softly, and reached over to pat my knee, her touch brief but warm. "You're choosing better now. We're your chosen family, no strings, just support." The words landed soft, but they resonated, highlighting the biological tie's toxicity, demands masked as love versus this where acceptance flowed freely. We ate slowly, the conversation meandering, from my cottage plans, Lisa pulling up photos on her phone, screen glowing as we huddled around, fingers pointing at the tiny porch, to silly stories, Mark recounting a freelance flop with exaggerated groans, his hands mimicking a computer crash. Laughter bubbled up, mine starting low in my throat before bursting out, shoulders shaking as Sarah added her own twist, her spoon gesturing like a wand. Micro moments built the warmth. Lisa noticing my empty plate and sliding another slice over without asking, the napkin fluttering. Mark adjusting the lamp when it flickered, his arm stretching overhead with a grunt. Sarah tucking a stray hair behind my ear mid-story, her fingers cool from the ice cream. No one avoided eye contact. Instead, gazes lingered with understanding, no judgment in the silences. Unlike the dinner's escalating barbs, here tensions dissolved. When I teared up recounting the disownment, Lisa's arm draped over my shoulders, a steady weight, while Mark fetched tissues, box rattling as he handed it over. "Let it out," Sarah murmured, her voice soft, passing the ice cream pint like a comfort object, the cold soothing as I held it. As the evening wore on, the rain tapping a gentle rhythm on the window, we sprawled more comfortably, backs against furniture, legs stretched. The contrast sharpened in my mind. Biological family, bound by blood, but fractured by exploitation, versus this chosen circle, forged in kindness and respect. They celebrated my refusal not as rebellion but growth, my savings not as hoarding, but savvy. "To new beginnings," Mark toasted again, bottles and cans clinking in a chorus, the sounds overlapping warmly. I clinked back, the vibration tingling up my arm, feeling seen truly, for the first time that night. The genuine moment stretched, unhurried, plates emptying slowly, conversations looping back to encouragement. Lisa promising to help pack when the cottage closed, Sarah offering plant cuttings for the yard, Mark volunteering his truck for moving. By the time they left, hugs exchanged at the door, Lisa's lingering, Mark's backslapping, Sarah's quick but sincere. The apartment echoed with their absence, but not emptiness. I locked the door, the bolt sliding home with a solid click, and leaned against it, smiling faintly at the scattered remnants, empty boxes, half-full cans. This was family, warm, reciprocal, a stark foil to the dinner's chill. The peace of it settled deep, affirming my break, as I cleared the table, wrappers crinkling in my hands. The wrappers crinkled one last time as I swept them into the trash bin, the lid swinging shut with a soft clang that marked the end of the evening's warmth. I stood there in the kitchen, hands braced on the counter, staring at the empty pint of ice cream melting slightly at the edges, a small puddle forming on the surface. The contrast lingered in my mind. Friends who showed up without demands, versus the family who just tried to claw back control over the phone. But as the clock ticked past midnight, the high from Lisa, Mark, and Sarah's visit began to ebb, replaced by the practical reality of what came next, the aftermath. Texts would come, calls, maybe even unannounced visits. I needed to build my fortress now, set boundaries like walls around my new life, starting tonight. I wiped the counter with a sponge, the suds foaming under my strokes, each circle a deliberate act of reclaiming my space. I moved to the living room, picking up my phone from where I'd left it on the couch, the screen lighting up with notifications, missed calls from Mom, a string of texts from Keith that I didn't open yet. My thumb hovered over the block button, heart racing slightly, but I set it down instead, not ready for that finality. Boundaries weren't about erasure, they were about control. I sat on the edge of the couch, knees bouncing as I pulled out a notebook from the side table drawer, the pages crisp under my fingers. Pen in hand, the cap clicking off with a snap, I started listing rules, my new rules of engagement. No unscheduled calls after 8 p.m. Responses only on my terms, not theirs. No financial discussions, period. Each bullet point flowed, the ink bleeding slightly on the paper as I pressed harder, the act therapeutic like drawing lines in the sand. The first test came the next morning, sunlight filtering through the blinds in slanted beams as I sipped coffee at the kitchen table, mug warm between my palms. My phone buzzed. Mom again, a voicemail this time. I played it on speaker, her voice filling the room, quivering at first but building to insistence. "Stephanie, we need to talk. Last night was a mistake. Come over for lunch, we'll figure the house out." Mistake. The word made me set the mug down hard, the ceramic thunking against the wood. I deleted it without replying, my finger swiping decisively, but guilt flickered, old habits dying hard. To counter it, I texted back a single line, "Not today, I'll reach out when I'm ready." Send. The whoosh sound felt empowering, my shoulders straightening as I stood, rinsing the mug under the faucet, water rushing over my hands in a cool stream. Keith's messages piled up by noon, aggressive at first. "You're really doing this? Over a stupid loan?" Then shifting to mockery, "Enjoy your lonely life, sis." I read them standing by the window, curtains parted slightly, watching pedestrians below hurry through the lingering drizzle. My jaw clenched, teeth grinding audibly in the quiet, but I didn't fire back. Instead, I crafted a response, typing and deleting until it was concise. "Your words prove my point. Don't contact me until you can respect my no." I hit send, then muted his notifications, the phone vibrating once more before going silent. The action was small, fingers tapping the screen with measured presses, but it built the fortress brick by brick. No more instant access to my peace. Afternoon brought Dad's call, his number flashing as I prepped lunch. A simple salad, knife chopping carrots with rhythmic thuds on the cutting board. I let it ring, the tone cycling 3 times before voicemail. Listening later, fork paused over my bowl, his voice was subdued. "Kiddo, your mom's upset. Let's not burn bridges, call back." Bridges they'd torched themselves. I ate slowly, chewing each bite deliberately, the crunch filling my ears, and decided on email for him, less immediate, more controlled. Sitting at my laptop, keys clacking under my fingers, I wrote, "Dad, I need space. The disownment hurt, but it was eye-opening. I'll initiate contact when ready. Please respect that." Attach, send. The inbox refreshed with a soft ding and I closed the lid, the click final like locking a gate. The aftermath unfolded in waves over the next few days, each interaction a stone in my boundary wall. Mom tried a surprise visit Tuesday evening. I saw her through the peephole, knuckles rapping sharply on the door, her face pinched under the hallway light. My heart pounded, hands pressing against the wood as if to hold it shut, but I didn't open. Instead, I texted from behind the barrier. "Not a good time. Please call ahead next time." She lingered, footsteps pacing before fading down the stairs, the elevator ding echoing. Relief washed over me as I slid down the door, back against it, knees drawn up, breathing deep until calm returned. That night, I added a chain lock, screwdriver twisting screws with firm turns, the metal gleaming new, a physical reminder of my rules. Keith escalated Wednesday, emailing from a new address, probably to bypass muting, ranting about my secret money and how I owed them. I read it at work, during a break, screen tilted away from coworkers, my finger scrolling slowly. Anger flared, but I channeled it into response. This is harassment. Any more and I'll block this too. Reflect on why I hid it. Copy-paste my rules list at the bottom, send. Back at my desk, stapler clicking as I organized papers, I felt the shift, handling it proactively, not reactively. Dad respected more, his next text Thursday simple, understood, here if you need. I replied briefly, thanks. While walking home, phone in hand, the evening air crisp against my cheeks. It was progress, small but real. Friends checked in too, Lisa's call Friday, her voice bright over the line as I folded laundry, shirt snapping straight. How's the fortress holding? She asked, and I laughed, hanger clinking on the rod. Solid, set rules, sticking to them. She affirmed. Good, you're teaching them, and yourself. By week's end, the attempts tapered. Mom's last text Saturday, apologetic but probing. Can we meet? Miss you. I waited hours, mulling over coffee, steam curling up before responding. Maybe soon, but on neutral ground. No house talk. It was a crack in the wall, controlled access. Cleaning the apartment Sunday, vacuum humming as I pushed it across the carpet, I reflected, these boundaries weren't punishment, they were protection. Micro-actions accumulated, deleting apps that notified too much, setting do not disturb hours, journaling responses before sending, pen scratching paper in cathartic bursts. The fortress stood, not impenetrable, but mine to guard. One evening, as rain pattered again, I sat on the couch, blanket tucked around me, phone silent by choice. The aftermath handled, new rules ingrained, I felt the peace deepen. No more walking on eggshells, just steady ground under my feet. The peace from those fortified boundaries carried me through the weeks leading up to closing day, a quiet undercurrent that steadied my steps even as the realtor's emails piled up with checklists and signatures. I'd wake early, brew coffee in the dim light of my apartment kitchen, the machine gurgling softly as I reviewed documents at the table, pen hovering over printed pages before scratching my name in looping cursive. But today was the culmination, the actual handover of keys to my small cottage, a modest one-story with faded yellow siding and a porch just big enough for a chair and some potted plants. I stood in front of the mirror that morning, adjusting the collar of my crisp white shirt, fingers tugging the fabric straight, feeling the starched material against my skin like a badge of self-made armor. My reflection showed eyes brighter than they'd been in months, no longer shadowed by family expectations, but the legacy of the Clark name still whispered in my mind, once synonymous with obligation and favoritism, now something I could reshape, starting with this home as a hub for positive change, not just shelter. I arrived at the title office early, parking my car in the lot with a gentle bump against the curb stop, the engine ticking as it cooled. The building was nondescript, glass doors reflecting the overcast sky, and I smoothed my slacks before stepping inside, the air conditioning hitting me with a chill that raised goosebumps on my arms. The receptionist nodded from behind her desk, phone cradled against her shoulder, and directed me to a conference room with a wave of her pen. I sat at the long table, chair wheels rolling smoothly as I pulled it in, my hands folding on the polished wood surface, fingers interlacing tightly to still the faint tremble of excitement mixed with nerves. This wasn't just buying a house. It was reclaiming my narrative, turning years of overshadowed effort into a legacy of kindness and respect, perhaps by opening it to community workshops or friend gatherings that fostered the support I'd craved. The realtor Jenna arrived first, her heels clicking on the tile as she entered, briefcase thumping onto the table. She smiled warmly, sliding a folder across to me, the papers whispering against the wood. "Ready to make it official?" she asked, her voice light, pen clicking as she uncapped it. I nodded, reaching for the documents, my thumb flipping through the tabs, mortgage details, inspection reports, all in order thanks to my meticulous freelance savings. As I signed the first page, pen gliding with a soft scratch, the weight of it hit. This home would be my canvas to redefine Clark. Not the family that drained accounts and demanded sacrifices, but one rooted in giving back. Maybe starting a book club for locals who'd felt invisible, or hosting free financial literacy sessions drawn from my own hard lessons. My signature flowed bolder on each line, the ink drying shiny under the fluorescent lights. The seller's agent joined next, an older man with a firm handshake, his palm rough against mine as we exchanged pleasantries. He avoided eye contact at first, shuffling his own papers, fingers tapping the edges to align them perfectly. Jenna facilitated, pointing out clauses with her pen tip, the metal glinting as it hovered. I initialed where needed, the ballpoint pressing indents into the paper, each mark a micro-assertion of independence. Inside, thoughts swirled. This success, 27,000 saved through late nights typing reports, eyes straining at screens, was mine to leverage for impact. I'd reclaim the name by making the cottage a beacon, perhaps partnering with a local nonprofit for mentorship meetups, turning personal pain into communal healing. The agent finally met my gaze, nodding approval as I pushed the stack back, his chair creaking as he leaned forward to countersign. Halfway through, the title clerk entered, clipboard in hand, her glasses slipping down her nose as she pushed them up with a knuckle. She reviewed aloud, voice monotone but efficient, finger tracing lines on her copy. I listened, nodding at intervals, my foot tapping softly under the table against the carpeted floor, a subtle release of building energy. When she paused for questions, I asked about property taxes, my voice steady, hand gesturing lightly for emphasis. She explained, flipping to a chart, her nail underlining figures, and I absorbed it, mind already planning budgets that included donations to causes like family counseling services. Ironic, but a way to heal the cycle I'd broken. Signing resumed, the pen's nib catching slightly on a textured page, requiring a firmer press that left a faint ink blot, but I continued undeterred. As the stack dwindled, Jenna pulled out the keys, dangling them from a ring with a jingle that echoed in the room. "These are yours now," she said, placing them in my open palm, the metal cool and jagged against my skin. I closed my fingers around them slowly, the teeth biting gently into my flesh, a tangible symbol of ownership. The agents stood, chairs scraping back in unison, handshakes exchanged, Jenna's warm and lingering, the seller's agent's brisk and formal, his eyes darting to his watch. "Congratulations," he murmured, avoiding prolonged contact, briefcase snapping shut with a click. I thanked them, voice catching slightly with emotion, pocketing the keys where they pressed against my thigh through the fabric. Walking out, the glass door swinging shut behind me with a hydraulic hiss. I paused on the sidewalk, keys in hand again, thumb rubbing the worn brass of the house key. The overcast sky had cleared to patches of blue, sunlight warming my face as I tilted it upward, eyes closing briefly. This was the event, the closing, that let me use my success for good. Driving to the cottage, radio off for silence, wheels humming over pavement, I envisioned the impact, inviting neighbors for casual talks on self-reliance, sharing my story without bitterness, reclaiming Clark as synonymous with empowerment. Arriving, I parked in the driveway, the gravel crunching under tires. Unlocking the door, key turning with a satisfying twist, the hinge creaking open to empty rooms, smelling of fresh paint. I stepped inside, door clicking shut, and wandered slowly, fingers trailing walls, feeling the textured drywall under my fingertips. In the living room, sunlight streamed through bare windows, dust motes dancing in beams. I sat on the floor, back against the wall, knees drawn up, keys jingling as I set them beside me. Here, I'd create legacy, workshops on budgeting for single women, drawing from my freelance grit, potlucks where stories of breaking cycles were shared, fostering the kindness my biological family lacked. Tears came then, warm trails down my cheeks, but I wiped them with my sleeve, fabric absorbing the moisture. Standing, I paced the space, steps echoing on hardwood, planning aloud in whispers. Bookshelves here for shared resources, table there for open conversations. Each idea solidified the reclamation. My name, on my terms, a force for positive ripples. Outside, I circled the yard, grass tickling my ankles through shoes, picking up a fallen leaf and crumbling it between fingers, the dry crackle grounding me. This home wasn't revenge, it was rebirth, impacting others as I'd wished to be impacted. Back inside, I locked up, key turning firmly, the sound of security. Driving away, mirror showing the cottage receding, I felt the legacy shift. Stephanie Clark, builder of bridges, not bearer of burdens. The cottage faded in the rearview mirror, its yellow siding blending into the tree line as I turned onto the main road, the tires humming steadily over the asphalt, carrying me back toward the city. But the drive felt different this time. Not an escape but a return to myself, the keys still jingling in my pocket like a quiet promise. I adjusted the mirror slightly, my fingers lingering on the frame, catching a glimpse of my eyes. Calmer now, reflecting the patchy blue sky overhead. The legacy shift I'd felt moments ago lingered, but as miles ticked by, it deepened into something more profound. A final reflection unfolding in the solitude of the car, where the only sounds were the whoosh of passing vehicles and the soft creak of the steering wheel under my grip. This wasn't just about the house or the boundaries or even the impact I planned. It was about realizing in this quiet stretch of highway that my worth had always been internal. A steady flame I'd let others dim but could never fully extinguish. True peace settled in then, not as a sudden wave, but as a gentle unfolding, like pages turning in a book I'd finally learned to read. I eased off the accelerator as traffic slowed ahead, brake lights flashing red in a chain reaction, my foot pressing the pedal with measured pressure, the car rocking gently to a stop. In that pause, my mind drifted inward, replaying fragments of the journey. Not in anger, but with a detached clarity, fingers drumming lightly on the wheel in a slow rhythm that matched my breaths. The family dinners, with their sidelong glances and unspoken demands, where I'd clenched my napkin under the table, nails leaving imprints in the fabric. The nights alone in my apartment, spreadsheet glowing on the screen as I transferred funds, mouse clicking with deliberate snaps, building my secret fund dollar by dollar. Each memory surfaced not as wounds but as lessons, my free hand reaching to adjust the air vent, cool breeze brushing my face like a whisper of release. I'd sought validation in their approval, twisting myself to fit the role of the dutiful daughter, but here, idling in traffic, horn beeping faintly from a car behind, I saw it clearly. My value wasn't in what I gave them, but in what I'd cultivated within. Resilience, like the quiet strength of roots pushing through soil. The light changed, green illuminating the dashboard, and I accelerated smoothly, the engine's low rumble vibrating through the seat. My thoughts deepened, exploring the core of it. Self-validation wasn't a destination but a practice, one I'd honed through micro-choices, like saying no at that fateful dinner, my voice steady despite the knot in my throat, chair scraping back as I stood. Or hanging up on their scrambling call, thumb pressing the screen with finality, the beep echoing in my ear. These weren't acts of rebellion, but affirmations, my hand now shifting gears with a click, the car surging forward. I glanced at the passenger seat, empty but for a folder of closing papers, edges curling slightly from the humidity seeping in. The peace came from knowing my worth was intrinsic, not earned through sacrifices or measured by their favoritism. Keith's endless schemes funded while my efforts faded into background noise. I'd internalized their narrative once, avoiding mirrors to dodge the doubt in my eyes, but now, as the highway opened up, speedometer needle climbing, I embraced it. I was enough. Always had been, the validation blooming from within like sunlight filtering through leaves. A rest area sign approached and I signaled, blinker ticking rhythmically as I pulled off, gravel crunching under tires in the parking lot. I stepped out, door thudding shut behind me, stretching my arms overhead, shoulders cracking with the release. The air smelled of pine and distant rain, wind rustling my hair as I leaned against the car, hip pressing into the warm metal. Here, in this unremarkable spot, the reflection crystallized. True peace wasn't absence of conflict, but presence of self-acceptance, my fingers tracing the key in my pocket, its edges familiar now. I'd find it in small rituals, brewing tea in my new kitchen, steam curling as I sipped, mug warming my palms, planting herbs on the porch, soil crumbling under my nails as I patted it down. No more clenching fists in response to their texts, no more avoiding calls with a tightened chest. Instead, a calm exhale, breaths deepening as I watched clouds drift, their shapes shifting lazily. Walking a short path nearby, shoes scuffing dirt, leaves crunching softly, I let the realization sink deeper. My journey had taught me that family wasn't blood alone, but the respect I extended to myself first. a foundation stronger than any shared name. The wind picked up, tugging at my shirt, and I hugged myself briefly, arms crossing over my chest, feeling the steady beat of my heart. Peace was this. Internal, unshakable, a quiet joy in solitude that didn't ache with loneliness. As I returned to the car, key turning in the ignition with a twist, engine roaring to life, I smiled faintly at the road ahead, the horizon open and inviting. The chains of obligation lifted, replaced by wings of self-worth, carrying me forward. Back on the highway, traffic thinning, I tuned the radio low, static giving way to a soft melody, volume knob turning under my fingertip. The final pieces fell into place. I'd broken the cycle not for revenge, but for this serenity, where my reflections turned kind, no longer haunted by what-ifs. Fingers relaxing on the wheel, posture easing, I drove on, the sun dipping lower, casting golden light across the dash. True peace, found in the mirror of my own soul, validated by the life I'd built, one deliberate step at a time. Have you ever felt stuck in a cycle of giving everything to others only to realize you're left empty-handed? I know I did, for far too long, pouring my energy into a family that never quite saw my worth. But breaking free taught me that true family is built on mutual respect and kindness, not endless obligation. If my story hits home, maybe you've been the overlooked sibling, the reliable one always sacrificing. Drop your experience in the comments below. What's one boundary you've set that changed everything? Or share a moment when you finally chose yourself. Reading your stories would mean the world. It reminds us we're not alone in this. If my journey resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear that it's okay to define success on their own terms. Remember, your worth isn't in what you give away, it's in the strength you hold within. You've got this. Step into your peace today.